You know, Odisha is among the top contributor in malaria cases.
Kutte Musa, entire department ko badnaam kar chalani.
Hi there, welcome back. I am Pratikshya Mishra and you're listening to Do I Like It, a Quint production where we review anything and everything under the sun. And in this episode, I will tell you if I like Daman. Let's get like a basic idea of what Daman is. Daman, directed by Vishal Maurya and Devi Prasad Lenka, starring Babushaan Mahanti as Dr. Siddhant Mahanti and Dipanwit Dashmohapatra as Ravindra Muduli, is a film basically. It starts off by telling you a story of this one doctor or medical student who's now a doctor has to go to an outskirts kind of village in Orissa because the government has that service bond thing where you have to do at least like 2 to 3 years of rural service before you can start practicing or do your PhD. He is of course very upsetty about this. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to like open a huge cardiac hospital near the airport. He is so upset by this and the conditions that he's ready to quit in the first day itself. He's like, "Mera hisab kar do, main ja raha hu." But something stops him, and eventually he stays there for a while, becoming a messiah, a god to the people around him. The story in the beginning will remind you a little bit of Panchayat in the way that both protagonists react to completely being thrust into a rural situation from, their whole city life and like how their life and career is not turning out the way that they expected it to, and abhi complain kar rahe hain, but abhi kya kar sakte hain, karna to padega kind of thing. It's there in both films. Now soon what happens is Siddhant, as the doctor, he starts treating a few people, and then he realizes that Malkangiri, the district that he is in, is a hotspot for malaria. Like it has become a hotspot for malaria. This is also true because Malkangiri was counted as one of India's worst malaria-affected districts, but has actually managed to turn it around. And that is the story that Daman actually is. That's also the place where the name Daman comes from. It's basically an acronym for Durgama Anchala Malaria Nirakarana, which essentially means malaria control in inaccessible areas. So Daman was introduced in 2017 and it's helped many districts in southern Orissa kind of handle the endemic that was malaria, including Koraput, Malkangiri obviously, Kalahandi, Raigada, Nuapada, all of it. But before I completely jump into how I felt about the film, I want to tell you that you can check out our other episodes from this series as well as other podcasts from the Quint on our website or wherever you get your podcasts from. So do I like Daman? As a story, Daman is great. It's inspiring. I think in the trailer also it says that it's based on real life events, and I think the closest thing to that is the experiences of Dr. Omkar Hota. The one complaint that I would have is that while the medical field and the doctors itself played a huge role in how the endemic was handled, there was also a lot going on in the grassroots level behind the scenes with, say, Anganwadi workers and Asha workers. In the film, it's shown that they do have a presence. The film becomes a hagiography of sorts. It becomes a little savior complexy. It makes sense why doctors become like gods to people. But if that was shown more from the people's perspective, instead of the film making him out to be this kind of knight in shining armor and this god figure, it would have worked better. And there's also, the superstitions that surround, like there's the babas and the jhad phook and aisa, gaon ke doctor ko dikha lenge. I love how sensitively bleak the film is, in the sense that before it goes into all the, everything's working out, this is a hero story, it shows you how people's lives are affected just because development, the quote-unquote development hasn't reached the areas. I grew up in, I guess, one of the villagiest villages to ever have villaged in Orissa. And I would also spend considerable time in Bhubaneswar, the capital. And the difference in both these places and their development was huge. Orissa has a lot of places that seem almost cut off from the mainland. And that makes it harder for people to access basic medical care. And that puts people in a lot of danger. Dr. Omkar Hota was known to have carried a woman on a cot for kilometers on an end. And it's also something that is shown in the film where, a pregnant woman is carried on a makeshift cot of sorts for a very long time. And it's heart-wrenching. It has the effect that it needs to have. That's the thing. People who also deserve credit are the cast, even beyond Babushaan and Dipanwit. The side characters in itself, even the village people, the tribal folk. But again, that's the thing, like it kind of gets overshadowed by the hagiography of it all. There is literally a full like Mean Girls type segment jahan pe aise everyone has close-ups and they're singing praises for the doctor. All of this could have been a very show don't tell kind of thing. Then it would have worked better. But it kind of just feels, do we really need this? Like we get it. Of course, like they love this guy. He's literally saving lives. One thing that I saw when jab maine Daman ka trailer dekha tha was the lighting was very with that kind of yellow filter. The color grading had that kind of yellow filter that Hollywood uses for like developing nations. They used it for a long time, sometimes still do. It's a kind of othering of the same people whose stories you're trying to tell. Everyone that's not us is painted with literally the same light. But I'm glad that that does not happen in the film. The film is actually lit beautifully. The night shots are so wonderfully lit कि ऐसा फिल्मों में नहीं होता कि अंधेरे में लोग खुसफुस कर रहे हैं. You're like थोड़ा जोर से बोलो या कोई टॉर्च मारो उन पे, हमें भी तो पता चलना चाहिए ना कि चल क्या रहा है वहाँ. That doesn't happen with Daman. You can see what's happening because it's very wonderfully done. So kudos to DOP Pratap Raut for capturing this and also how gorgeous Orissa is as a state and also managing to capture the development gap without making it seem very exploity, like without making it seem like poverty porn. Sometimes the shots become a little Netflix documentary and that can be a little jarring, but theek hai. One good thing that I appreciate so much is that I feel like no matter how I feel about the film, I do feel pride that this has come out of Oriya cinema because it's not a common thing. I grew up watching Oriya films that were made very early on, and I like it sucks to admit, but I did kind of lose touch with the industry. While this might not be the best film or like a masterpiece or or like an Oscar-worthy film, I am hoping it's just the start and there's much more to look forward to. Daman is a story of inspiration and that in itself is kind of amazing. So maybe if the film's voice had been more people-oriented instead of oriented towards the hero, it would have been a much better film. The dialogues in themselves are sometimes a little preachy, sometimes a little too in the face, but the entire film kind of comes together beautifully despite of that. So to answer that question, do I like Daman? I did quite enjoy it. Like there were segments where I was a little bored and I was like, okay, we've seen this in films before. But I guess the story in itself keeps you hooked and it's a story that needs to be told because, resilience dekhna kisko pasand nahi hai. And watch more Oriya films because some of it is pretty great. That was all for the episode. Thank you so much for listening. Do I Like It is a Quint production executively produced by Ritu Kapoor and Shelly Walia, hosted by me, Pratikshya Mishra, produced and edited by Anjali Palod with music from Daman and BMG Production.
You were listening to the Quint's podcast.